What's up everyone, Talon here, and today I'm going to be able to show you, kind of just show and tell, a very unique and pretty exclusive rifle system. Now this is going to be typically just an overview. It's not going to be super in-depth. I'm not going to take it apart, but I am going to be able to kind of at least show you and bring to your attention some of the features, what it may look like, so on and so forth. So what I have here in front of me is going to be a VFC Gas Blowback BCM rifle. And for anyone who is not super familiar, really quickly breaking it down on the European and Asian market specifically, there is from BCM, or the BCM licensed product, a battery powered and a gas blowback variant. For the US market specifically, we can only get the battery powered rifle version in the US. And through just pretty simple Googling, no one else has the gas blowback, and definitely no one is selling it here in the US. There's only the battery powered versions. So how did we get this? And kind of from what I'm being told is that it's not illegal in order to own and have in the US a gas blowback here from VFC, but it is kind of illegal, and there does need to be some workarounds in order to bypass some of the custom importation rules and regulations surrounding the VFC gas blowback specifically. And not all gas blowbacks from VFC aren't allowed into the US. Of course, all the VFC pistols, the MP5, the UMP, and I feel like there's another one that I'm forgetting on the top of my head. I feel like it's a 308 something, like a 308 replica. But essentially anything that's going to be an AR base up system, you will not see a VFC gas blowback variant. We of course have the kid wheelbase like I have in my collection, WeTech, Double Eagle, GHKs, so on and so forth. Go on EVIC, go on Airsoft GI, Amped, so on and so forth, all those retailers, and look at like gas blowback options. You'll find a lot of different AR models, but none of them are going to be the VFC manufacturer specifically. And the rumor is many years ago, someone got a VFC AR style here, and they, as the rumor goes, was able to modify it in order to fire real live blank rounds inside of a airsoft housing. That's what the rumor goes. Of course, there's no concrete type of evidence. In my limited Google searching, not that I spent a lot of time on it, but you know, through Reddit, Facebook posts, kind of conversations here and there, that's kind of like the consensus rumor that we've all generally heard. But there's really nothing to prove that that was the original case. So it's been consistent that we've never had any VFC GBBRs on the market. And it's very unique, very cool that we were able to have this model here with us, provided by a local player. This is not mine specifically. I'm just borrowing it for a video like I did here. Was able to do a year ago, got my hands on this previously and tried to do a kind of overview. Was able to shoot it a bunch, got a cool little intro, brought it to the owners at Airsoft headquarters, and they said, scrap the project, we would rather not have that on the platform. But of course, this is my channel, I can do whatever I want. So today I'm gonna be breaking down and kind of overviewing the BCM gas blowback rifle. This is gonna be a full metal version, so it's going to be, to my knowledge, pretty realistic. It is, of course, going to be, compared to the real BCM rifles, a much lighter variant. But if anyone knows about gas blowback rifles, they have a more realistic action and function compared to battery powered rifles, which in the case of this rifle in particular, being that it is intended to be a training alternative for civilians, law enforcement, military, so on and so forth, it is proven a very handy training platform specifically. I think for the purpose of real firearms specifically, I think that is a real benefit, and it has, in my experiences, proven to be extremely beneficial in having law enforcement or civilians utilize a gas blowback rifle system get very familiar with the manual of arms, get very familiar with their kit loadouts with non-real magazines, but magazines that are going to weigh very similarly to fully loaded magazines, as well as be comfortable and consistent with the general operations, that having a bolt come backwards, having a hammer system, having very similar controls and layouts to that of potentially their real life counterparts. That's how I was able to get as good. Of course, I'm not a great shooter. I'm not a great shot by any means. I'm not claiming to be, but I am a pretty decent shot when it comes to real firearms. And I think that half of that is due to having a lot of experience on the airsoft end specifically. So I think that there is really something there to say about utilizing them as a training platform. Do I think that they're one-to-one? Of course not. But you're not here for me to talk about training procedures. You're here for me to talk about the BCM rifles in particular. Like I started saying out, it is a full metal build. Of course, it is going to be lighter because it's going to be based off of a aluminum construction. A lot more of the weight is going to be concentrated around the back half of the rifle system. But it's still a super lightweight rifle to where, you know, moving it around with one hand is absolutely no problem. It is very lightweight, especially compared to my KWA gas blowback rifle. The BCM is significantly lighter weight compared to what I have right here. Kind of discounting the magazine and kind of the quad rail. Even if I were to put the magazine in, maybe add a shorty grip isn't going to add anything. Little light isn't going to add anything either. But all of the weight is very much concentrated on this KWA rifle in particular. So it is by no means a one-to-one replica. That being said, as it is designed to replicate kind of a sportier type of rifle. I would probably describe that as a sportier rifle, being a shorter barrel length than what we're typically allowed. I feel like this is a very good length of rifle. For me specifically, the length of the entire rail system combined with the barrel and kind of the one position back of the stock is exactly where I would prefer my rifle loadouts. So I think that the ergonomics are extremely well. And I do utilize that vert grip, kind of like shorty guy, as a combined hand stop and vert grip in order to pull the rifle into my shoulder. Granted, this is airsoft and we actually don't have any type of recoil that we need to manage. It's kind of just more of a good point of practice of getting full control of the system entirely. In my case, if ever I need to transition shoulders, you'll find in gameplay that I'll either grab the entire grip like so, because I am not left-hand dominant. Very seldom will you see me actually grab the handguard here as a right-handed shooter. And that's just how I do CQB stuff. Because this is not a US compliant version, it actually came with the BCM birdcage. It did not come with a gross orange muzzle device. It just came as it. It has a very similar length of pull to my T10, in which case a in-force flashlight is actually exactly what I would do. So we would have a top-centered flashlight that even if you were to transition to a left hand, you could still C-clamp around the handguard and hit it with the top of the flashlight there. M-LOK handguard, not much to say about it. Very modular, very minimalist, very lightweight. A lot of customizable options for a lot of people that run this type of handguard. Nothing more to say about it. The receiver is going to be right hand based. There's really nothing that's going to make it kind of standard type of AR type of setup. Just the right hand selector switch controls. So we have this guy right here, our 3 positions for standard airsoft replicas, our bolt release on the left hand side here, magazine release on the right hand side here, the trigger, and we'll talk about the hammer in just a second. You know, the entire receiver layout is extremely minimalist. The only thing that's going to be kind of a upgrade as far as the BCM one is going to be the ambidextrous charging handle here. So regardless of whether you're going to be right-handed pulling this back or even left-handed pulling this back, or even like so, you have the ability to get that charging handle racked and operated and engaging everything internally here. The imitation bolt does have BCM, and it does have a Magpul ejection port cover. I don't know exactly if this is stock or not, if he put this on aftermarket. I would need to double check. On the very bottom here, we do have a pistol grip. Nothing really new as far as pistol grips go. It is a BCM style, so it is extremely thin around the actual width of the grip. It is very vertical in orientation. That's something that I personally like in my CQB type of setups. That allows me to kind of orientate my elbow a little bit closer to my body. And for me personally, I have a very hard time chicken winging in this orientation. I naturally just find myself just resting my elbow down here in order to keep a very low profile when coming around corners like this. You'll notice that pointing kind of just offset of the camera as I'm aiming down the rifle right here. There's not a whole lot of elbow or shoulder sticking out, but that rifle is going into my shoulder. And it is a couple of days since I last played down at the arena with my own gas blowback and with another rifle. So that spot in particular is very tender of just jamming my stock into my shoulder there. Ooh, still tendy. Going back on the receiver, we do have a single sling loop that is going to be a quick detach model. Standard buffer tube. We do have a 6-position stock, the BCM one in particular. I am not super versed in the form of BCM stocks here. I'm not super aware as to how to get it off and away, but I'm sure probably could YouTube it. And really there's no need to get to the inside there because there's no batteries. So it kind of just stays there. Now, let's talk about actual performance. This rifle in particular, I can't say for all BCM gas blowback rifles, this one in particular has a very hard spring attached to the hammer. So once I have it racked and that hammer is engaged on the inside of the receiver, it comes down with force in order to get that gas ejected. Do it one more time. Just absolute silence down here in my recording studio in my basement, and then just hearing the absolute slap of that hammer. Just breaking it. Terrifying. I don't know exactly why they went with such a hard spring on that hammer assembly. If we compared it to the gas blowback KWA, which is mine right here, and which, to be fair, I've had this for many years, a much weaker spring. It does spring and it does hammer, but it's almost like the reset of the hammer is actually louder than the hammer falling forward. We'll listen to the reset again, and then the hammer. It's pretty close. Versus the BCM here. Okay. Reset. And then the hammer. Just bam! Hitting you with everything. Again, I couldn't tell you as to why they did it. I'm not even going to give you a theoretical reason. They just did. Like with most ARs as well, getting that lower receiver that is self-contained, of course, wants to be a little harder. I will say that this one in particular is a little bit more realistic compared to the KWA, although the newer versions of KWAs are utilizing a similar system, and I'll actually show you what that is. So in the case of we have our lower receiver still hinged onto the upper receiver here. And here we have that hammer. If we pull back on the charging handle, we'll notice that it doesn't come out all the way, unlike the KWA LM4, which means we need to pull backwards and drop our imitation bolt. And then this charging handle actually slides into a little cut, because this, very similarly to real charging handles, have a little bit of a leaf pattern on the body of the charging handle here in order to keep it locked inside of that charging handle track. Which means in the case of reinstalling the charging handle, we have to go into the body of the upper receiver, find that little pattern track, drop it into the charging handle track, start it sliding down, insert our charging handle, drop it down, and in which case we can close the entire receiver, pushing our receiver pin in, and now we're good to go again. In the limited experience that I have with this rifle system specifically, I will say that the gas magazine does have a softer roll-off as far as decreasing in gas pressure and thus decreasing the amount of velocity and efficiency inside of the rifle system specifically. That is kind of something that is typically seen with higher velocity of rifle systems. This one in particular shoots at 290, 280 feet per second for the Asiatic countries specifically that have that 1 joule velocity restriction. I get you, it's weird numbering, it doesn't make sense, but that's just what their non-2A countries require for airsoft as a hobby. So I will say that you have a harder time noticing when those gas magazines are reaching to the end of their usable state. You can kind of hear it over a longer period of time compared to the KWAs, which have a very quick drop off of their gas efficiency performance. This rifle in particular does shoot around 310, 300 feet per second. I think on Sunday when I went and played with it, I think the most that it shot was 308, 305. So a little over that 1 joule limitation, but well under what the airsoft arena is requiring and what a lot of these indoor fields are requiring. So KWA with their LM4 system, how I have that one built, the efficiency of magazines are very quick, which means as they're utilizing gas, that has a very quick drop off, and you can physically hear as you're shooting the rifle when it's running out of gas, whether it be halfway through the magazine or partially through the magazine. You know when you need to swap those magazines out. In the case of this VFC rifle in particular, it is much harder to identify where that mag swappage needs to occur when that magazine is running out of gas. That's one of the only downsides that I have seen with this rifle in particular, and that's just my 2 cents. Otherwise, it is incredibly smooth. Granted, it is significantly newer and has significantly less rounds compared to my LM4. Significantly less rounds. My LM4 is a horror, by the way. But I like this rifle in particular. In most cases, which actually getting into some of the negative drawbacks of this, in some cases, the magazine empty magazine detection system will not 100% work. In the case of this, where I had it pulled back, it kind of caught, but didn't actually come forward. In my limited experiences with this rifle, I've had the charging hand or the bolt lock backwards. Removing the magazine has been enough in order to get that bolt to go forward without hitting that bolt release. I have also had it a couple of times, very few times, but a couple of times for me to notice specifically with, again, that bolt lock backwards. I'm in between magazines. I insert my magazine, keeping my thumb off of that bolt release, but it will still drive that bolt forward. So whatever it is internally catches on something and it just sends it home. And nothing I've been able to do has been able to replicate that issue in particular. but sometimes it just automatically does it when inserting a magazine or removing a magazine, which is not super great. The magazines in particular will start to wear down on the left-hand side here, which whatever the paint coating is, it is incredibly thin, and it is utilizing a silver colored type of metal for the underneath the painting. So whenever there's any type of wear on the face of the magazine, it becomes very evident where that wear is. In the case of this magazine, it is on the very back of the magazine here, right where that fill valve is, as well as on the left-hand side here, where that slot is in order to retain the magazine in the receiver. But otherwise, the actual plastic top piece that is protruding from the magazine that goes up into the rifle is actually very, very minimalist. Again, comparing to what I do know, what I do have, compared to a KWA, granted it's not that much different, but I imagine like in usage, in travel, transport, just accidents, if you were to drop this magazine with those feed lips having less surface area that is thin, these feed lips are less likely to break compared to the KWAs, which I have had a lot of these feed lips actually break on me simply in transportation to a field. They're just in my gun bag, in the on the outside of the bag where you typically have your like 2 or 3 pockets for BBs or magazines, stuff like that. That's where I'll have these magazines in, and it's just like for whatever reason it'll ding on something, whether I have them up or down. I typically have them up like this, and some of them have just broken in transport. I couldn't tell you. Pretty weird. And the feed lips for the KWAs are a little bit more expensive. I couldn't tell you with the VFC, but I can tell you from my experiences having to order parts, components from overseas, any type of repairs that you do need to do with this rifle system need to have those parts purchased overseas. Unless you plan on getting a second rifle right away to just serve as a parts rifle, you will be spending quite a lot of money on all of the shipping costs associated with overseas handling. Just please keep that in mind. So whenever you do a large parts batch, that you get plenty to last you for a while, because I'm assuming you don't want to get parts very often. In the case of gas blowbacks in particular, they are a very maintenance heavy rifle system. Not only do you need to be on top of lubricating and cleaning, but any type of wear and tear is 10 times more immediate compared to AEGs. AEGs tend to have better based internals with gearboxes, wiring systems. They typically do not wear very quickly. It usually takes 2 or 3 times as many rounds before you start to really get into a point where you need to replace something. Gas blowbacks are a constant maintenance. That being said, I think that they are a phenomenal replacement for trainers. I think they are a heck of a lot of fun out on the field, especially in the case of utilizing gas blowback just a couple of days ago at indoors. I've had some players that I was either shooting next to or directly at physically react to the operation of a bolt system. That's very irregular that you see airsoft players running gas blowbacks as a main type of rifle system, just due to the reasons that I listed. So it's definitely a very good treat, not only in my case of being able to actually go out and utilize a gas blowback, but it's also a pretty fun time, I think, for others as well. Maybe not the people that I'm shooting at, because I am a little bit of a menace when it comes to my KWA rifle, a little bit of a double or triple tap animal.
Target acquired.
Again, sorry. So, that is what we have of this rifle here. I'm sorry that I'm not able to actually break it open or give you any type of gameplay associated with this. And as you guys have seen, very limited shooting footage that I have with this. Almost all of it recorded from about a year ago when I first started to make this video. And now I'm actually getting to the point of breaking down this rifle and presenting it to you guys again on my own platform, because at this point I am my own boss and I say, do it. If you have any further questions about this rifle in particular, I'll do my best to answer them. I can't guarantee that I'll be able to answer them, but I will give it my best shot. Anyway, thank you for staying until the end of the video. I really appreciate you guys, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Take care.